Hey there, welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Renata Kiss.
And tonight, President Biden passes the torch to Kamala Harris at the DNC.
Meanwhile, Democrats release their official party platform.
And a new report shows unprecedented levels of media bias this election cycle. Well, as I said, President Biden spoke in Chicago yesterday for the opening night of the DNC, and during his speech, Biden officially passed the torch to Kamala Harris, expressing his support for the Harris-Walz ticket.
It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more. I love my country more, and we need to preserve our democracy. In 2024, we need you to vote. We need you to keep the Senate. We need you to win back the House of Representatives. And above all, we need you to beat Donald Trump. And elect Kamala and Tim.
Biden contrasted Harris to former President Donald Trump, who Biden said still remains a threat to democracy.
Kamala and Tim will protect your freedom. They'll protect your vote, your right to vote. They'll protect your civil rights. This will be the first presidential election since January 6th. On that day, we almost lost everything about who we are as a country. And that threat, this is not hyperbole, that threat is still very much alive. It's that simple. It's that serious. And the power is literally in your hands. History is in your hands. Not hyperbole. It's in your hands. America's future is in your hands.
Together, Democrats presented a united front against the former president, as other speakers also included Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and 2016 Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. At the same time, the Democratic Party has now officially released its platform as the DNC gets underway. We go to FISM's Ian Patrick for more on that.
As the Democratic National Convention kicks off in Chicago, some have been paying close attention to the party's rather bizarre platform for the year ahead. Unveiled one day ahead of the DNC kicking off, the platform begins with a long-quoted Democrat statement that America is, quote, at an inflection point. From here, it offers up both President Biden and Vice President Harris as the team needed to keep running America. And if Biden's name being mentioned seems odd, you aren't the only one who thinks so. Former President Donald Trump and his campaign have been pointing fingers at the platform for how it refuses to address Biden's decision to step away from the presidential run. It was drafted shortly before Biden decided to step away from his presidential campaign, but the platform does specifically mention a, quote, second term under Biden just around 20 times. Trump wrote on Truth Social that the decision to not change this phrasing, quote, shows that the platform is not that important to them. Trump's campaign wrote a similar message on X, saying that it shows hilarious incompetence masking a truth, which is that Kamala's presidency would be a Biden second term. And what exactly would that term look like? Well, some policies are unsurprising as presented by the platform, and ones that we've heard in the past couple of years. For example, the Democrats will continue supporting a more diplomatic approach to world issues while affirming unending support for Ukraine and NATO during the war in Russia. They'll continue vying for higher taxes on wealthier individuals and big corporations, and they'll keep trying to ban assault weapons, all while increasing funding to government organizations like the ATF and FBI for safety reasons. But there also exists within the platform a list of policies showing how radical the party has truly become. For example, the platform advocates for the passing of the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the For the People Act, both of which aim to give the federal government control over election processes that critics say should be given to the states. Meanwhile, the Democrats are hard-pressed to pass a bill which would restore Roe v. Wade and grant federal protections to abortion at the taxpayer's expense. And this is actually oddly reflected and supported by the presence of Planned Parenthood at the DNC itself, which is oddly offering a mobile health clinic providing free vasectomies and medication abortion. Another section deals with transgenderism and other such issues in the nation. Among some of the policy suggestions in the platform include adding sexual orientation to civil rights legislation, which could theoretically make it impossible for a Christian in the working world to conscientiously object to anything in the field of gender identity which may conflict with their faith. It also promotes, quote, fighting book bans that censor LGBTQI+ content. Now, this issue is notoriously misrepresented in the platform and by Democrats as a whole. Books being removed from schools, those in high school and even as young as elementary school, are largely pornographic in nature, often depicting graphic sexual scenes, while also sometimes including LGBT themes. In addition, the platform also supports so-called medically necessary gender-affirming care for adults and younger people. There is much more to the platform beyond what I was able to mention here, but you can read the platform in its entirety online as provided by the Democrat Party. This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Thanks for that, Ian. And on the Republican side of the aisle, Donald Trump isn't mincing words when criticizing the vice president, that is Kamala Harris. Trump held a rally at a factory in York, Pennsylvania yesterday, where he told attendees that his Democratic opponent is a country destroyer and an economy wrecker. He said 78 days from now, the state will fire her.
78 days from now, Pennsylvania is going to tell her that we've had enough, that we can't take it anymore, and comrade Kamala Harris, you're fired. Get out. You're not doing the job. Get out.
However, some of Trump's supporters say the Republican candidate should focus on policy instead of his bombastic personal attacks. Here's Republican Senator Lindsey Graham saying the key to the White House is policy.
Donald Trump, President Trump, can win this election. His policies are good for America, and if you have a policy debate for president, he wins. Donald Trump, the provocateur, the showman, may not win this election. So I'm looking for President Trump to show up in the last 80 days to define what he will do for our country. That's what I would focus on.
At the same time, several anti-Israel protesters were arrested in Chicago yesterday after they breached a security fence outside the DNC. Thousands of protesters rallied near the convention center demanding an end to the war in Gaza while condemning President Biden for supporting Israel.
Biden, you are gonna burn in hell. You are gonna burn in hell. Biden, can't you see? Biden, can't you see? Palestine will be free. Palestine will be free.
Similar chants were also made about Vice President Kamala Harris. During the protest, far-left independent candidate Cornel West held a so-called Abandon Harris campaign rally where he said the Palestinian people are facing a genocide.
I'm here because I have an unstoppable love for my precious Palestinian brothers and sisters. And when you love people, you hate the fact that they're being treated unjustly and unfairly. So when it comes to genocide, when it comes to ethnic cleansing, when it comes to apartheid.
The pro-Israel organization NGO Monitor reports that many of the groups behind these protests have, quote, led and participated in anti-Semitic and pro-terror events in the past. This includes the National Students for Justice in Palestine, which called Hamas's October 7th terror attack a historic win for the Palestinian resistance. This comes as some protesters are now openly displaying their support for Hamas and other terror groups.
Can you explain the flags that you have for me here? I know that I recognize the Palestine flag, but these three flags right here. Could you just explain them for me?
This is spokesman of Hamas called Abu Ubaidah.
Okay.
And the green one is Hamas flag.
It's a Hamas flag. Okay. And then what's this black one right here?
This is jihad.
It's jihad.
Yes.
Okay.
And if anti-Semitic protests weren't enough, Republicans are also targeting swing district races at the DNC. The National Republican Congressional Committee is setting up a billboard outside the convention, calling out 5 Democrat lawmakers who have decided not to attend the event. Alongside their photos will be the sentence, "Have you seen me?" NRCC Communications Director Jack Pendle is accusing these representatives of being enablers of Kamala Harris's dangerous agenda if re-elected. The lawmakers in question, including Pennsylvania's Matt Cartwright and Maine's Jared Golden, are currently in toss-up races. Pendle added that these House Democrats support everything Kamala Harris stands for with their voting records. The billboard seeks to undermine the absentee lawmakers by tying these Democrats to the vice president. And coming up next, we break down the difference in media coverage between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. We'll be right back after this.
Tragically, and all too often, a young mother in an unplanned pregnancy is in crisis. Pressured from others and without the support of the father of the baby, she feels alone, compelled into making a heartbreaking decision she will regret her whole life. But she is not alone. You can be there for her by giving a life-changing ultrasound through Preborn. Seeing her baby on ultrasound is a game changer, doubling the chances she will choose life from 40% to 80%. For only $28 a month, less than $1 a day, you can show a mom her baby on ultrasound. Your love can save a preborn baby and give a lifetime of joy. Give your tax-deductible gift today. Call pound 250 and say the keyword baby, or donate securely at preborn.org/TV.
Well, in our journey through history, let's explore one of the most famous physical pieces of history in the world. This structure was the original sports arena, as it were, at least in the Western world, and it would serve as a model for modern-age professional sports stadiums. Now, the sports that took place in this stadium, though, were vastly different from baseball or football. They were life and death battles, killing for sport and for entertainment for the Roman aristocracy.
To watch more episodes of A Moment in History, go to FISM.tv.
What can you tell our listeners about the benefits of being a partner?
It's blessed me with an opportunity to help further the kingdom in a small way, which matters a lot because God takes small things and makes them big. The blessing really has been to be able to take care of my family, but also take care of the kingdom. Going to bed knowing that not only are you correctly managing your investments, but you're doing it in a God-honoring way.
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. Well, let's continue with the media's coverage of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, like we mentioned. Mainstream outlets quickly recovered from the chaos surrounding President Biden's unexpected resignation from his re-election campaign and replaced their doubts with swoon-worthy coverage of Harris. According to the Media Research Center, or MRC, 84% of coverage of the vice president has been positive, while Trump's has been 89% negative on ABC, NBC, and CBS. Harris has received 66% more airtime than Trump as well. MRC reports that Harris's positive coverage outnumbers any other major party nominee, while Trump's coverage has been overwhelmingly negative. But according to a recent Rasmussen poll, 60% of voters believe the media is just trying to boost the vice president's electability, and they see right through their tactics.
Fascinating coverage, though. We'll have to see if it has an influence on the election. I would have to imagine it would have some, but we'll have to wait and see. Meanwhile, former New York Congressman George Santos pleaded guilty to fraud charges yesterday in federal court as the former Republican representative was indicted on 23 counts, including fraud and the misuse of campaign funds. Speaking with reporters outside the courthouse, Santos had this to say.
To my family, friends, and supporters, and the people of New York's 3rd Congressional District, I offer my deepest apologies. It has been the proudest achievement of my life to represent you, and I believe I did so to the best of my abilities. But you also trusted me to represent you with honor and to uphold the values that are essential to our democracy. And in that regard, I failed you.
Santos has been accused of stealing other people's identities and making unauthorized charges to his own donors' credit cards. Santos is now facing a minimum 2-year sentence after pleading guilty to wire fraud and aggravated identity theft, but he could serve up to 8. He is due to be sentenced this February.
Meanwhile, the attorneys general of Kansas and West Virginia and 22 other states are asking the Supreme Court to protect an Arizona law that prevents illegal foreigners from voting. The legislation would require proof of citizenship to vote in person or by mail in federal elections, but it was blocked by a lower court earlier this month. The Republican National Convention swiftly filed an emergency application with the Supreme Court in response, and yesterday the AGs told the court that states have a sovereign right to police elections. They added that it's known illegals are voting in elections. They said the debate is simply about the scale of the problem. West Virginia Attorney General Patrick Morrisey said in a separate statement that the law is about safeguarding the heart of our democratic process. The Republican National Convention wants a Supreme Court ruling by the end of tomorrow, which is Arizona's deadline to resolve litigation before printing ballots.
And shifting our coverage here away from politics to other national news, where storms in New England and the eastern United States turned deadly this week after the region saw rainfall that some scientists are describing as a 1-in-1,000-year event. Severe storms in the mid-Atlantic and northeastern parts of the country triggered deadly flash flooding in parts of Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. Parts of Connecticut in particular saw as much as 13 inches of rain in just 12 hours. Tragically, at least 2 people have died. Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont has since declared a state of emergency, saying the, quote, sudden and severe flooding has caused significant damage to infrastructure in the western portion of the state, resulting in evacuations, rescues, and more than 24 road closures. At least 100 people have been rescued since the flooding began.
And elsewhere, the environmental, social, and governance, or ESG movement, isn't so hot anymore, based on recent reports that show major banks pulling out of the anti-capitalist climate program. The latest to leave Climate Action 100 Plus are JP Morgan and State Street Global Advisors. BlackRock is also reducing its involvement with the investment program. This means a $14 trillion loss for the quasi-climate activist movement. The controversial ESG policy activists that set out to keep large financial corporations accountable to climate control initiatives have also pushed banks to divest from conservative customers, especially if the clients were Christian. They also pressured them to refrain from business ties with pro-life states. But due to counter pressure from Republicans, some of these big companies are rethinking and in some cases leaving their leftist business model because it's simply not worth it for them.
And it's not just ESG that's facing problems, as motorcycle company Harley-Davidson also says it's now ended its DEI initiatives following growing backlash from its loyal customer base. In a statement released yesterday, the company said, quote, "It is critical to our business that we hire and retain the best talent and that all employees feel welcome. That said, we have not operated a DEI function since April of 2024, and we do not have a DEI function today." The statement follows an explosive social media post by conservative influencer Robbie Starbuck back in July.
I wonder how many Harley riders are aware that Harley-Davidson is a platinum founding member of the LGBT Chamber of Commerce in Wisconsin. This is the same chamber that says on behalf of the businesses that are a part of the Wisconsin LGBT Chamber, they opposed banning transgender sex changes for children. In Harley's so-called sustainability report, they also say that their 1,800 global employees completed a virtual training to learn what an ally is to the LGBTQ+ community, and that employees also participated in an engaging and interactive learning session that allowed them to explore social identities, both seen and unseen. We all know what that means.
Starbuck blames the company's policy on its current CEO. He's a German climate activist named Jochen Zeitz.
That was sort of our comeback as a company into the world, opening our factories again and bringing everybody as diverse as we could possibly be as a business and a brand, and celebrate diversity and inclusion. And that's one of the reasons why I took the job, is because I believe in an incredible American icon and the transformation and the opportunity to contribute positively to a very divisive society.
Starbucks says he's now 3 for 3 after his videos resulted in similar policy changes at John Deere and also Tractor Supply. All right, and we have plenty more news coming up next. We'll be right back after a moment in history.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. In tonight's segment, let's go back to perhaps the most crucial period in American history. To understand the significance of historical events, we must never hyper-focus on important events such that we miss what led to and followed them. Tonight, let's explore one such event, a process that took place immediately after the American Civil War. Now, in order for the country to heal after its most bloody war, the rebel states needed to be readmitted back into the Union. This was a messy process, taking several years, but ultimately leading to a true reunification of the United States. Let's explore that reunion of America after the Civil War. The South officially surrendered on April 9, 1865 at Appomattox Courthouse. Interestingly enough, it was several months before the last Confederate soldiers laid down their arms. Now, remember, in the 1860s, news traveled much slower than it does today, and for many Confederates in the wilderness, there was no access to the recently invented telegram messaging system, so messages often took days to be delivered. There is speculation that the last Confederate soldiers to surrender did not do so until the summer of 1866. But at any rate, the war was over, and for the North, those who had once been their countrymen and then enemies of war now had to somehow return to a relationship of fellow countrymen. Abraham Lincoln encouraged both fair punishment of the rebels for what they had done, while also a spirit of grace for welcoming them back into the Union. Jefferson Davis, meanwhile, was captured and held as a prisoner of war for 2 years. Under Andrew Johnson's leadership, which was oftentimes foolish, Southern states began to be readmitted back into the Union in the years immediately following the war. The process was messy, but the end result was necessary for the preservation of the Union in the providence of God. South Carolina, the first state to secede back in 1860, rejoined the country in 1865. In 1866, Tennessee rejoined the nation. 1868 saw the return of North Carolina, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, and Florida. And in 1870, Texas, Georgia, Mississippi, and Virginia, the home state of the Confederacy's capital and its Supreme General Robert E. Lee, all returned to the United States. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Hi, this is Sheena Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
And welcome back to FISM News. Once again, I'm Renata Kiss. Well, Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced yesterday that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accepted a Gaza ceasefire proposal. The U.S. Secretary adds that it's now up to Hamas to accept the updated proposal.
In a very constructive meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu today, he confirmed to me that Israel accepts the bridging proposal, that he supports it. It's now incumbent on Hamas to do the same.
Senior Hamas official rejected the statement, saying the proposal raises many ambiguities. The day before, the terrorist organization said the deal was biased toward Israel and didn't reflect an earlier agreement. It's unknown if the newest negotiation includes an Israeli proposal to control some strategic corridors inside Gaza. Hamas has said that's a non-starter for them. However, Netanyahu's office said last week that it was a lie that Israel made new demands during the July negotiations.
But there could be a new kink in the negotiations as terror groups Hamas and Islamic Jihad claimed responsibility yesterday for a terrorist attack in Tel Aviv, both of them now vowing to continue what they called martyrdom operations inside Israel. A bomb detonated on Sunday near a synagogue, killing the man who carried it and also injuring one other. An Israeli government spokesman says the backpack detonated before the bomb carrier reached a more heavily populated area. This all comes just 1 hour after Blinken arrived in the city to push that ceasefire in Gaza.
And over in Eastern Europe, the Ukrainian military is destroying bridges inside Russia in a bid to cripple supply lines for Putin's forces. Russian military bloggers claim that Ukraine has now blown up 3 bridges in the Kursk region, though Kyiv only claims responsibility for 2. A Ukrainian commander says destruction will hinder Russia's logistical capabilities. However, new pontoon bridges are already on the River Sam, according to satellite images. Meanwhile, President Volodymyr Zelensky claims the border area has now been cleared of most Russian military. This comes as Russia makes gains in the Donbas region. Ukrainian authorities ordered the evacuation of a key city, Pokrovsk, yesterday, saying civilians have 2 weeks at most to flee. The city serves as a logistical hub for Kyiv's eastern front.
And to wrap up our show today, we do have one final story, this time focusing on Iran and its attempts to influence the election, as the FBI has now officially confirmed that Tehran is in fact responsible for the hacking of former President Donald Trump's campaign. According to the agency, the Iranian government hack was officially intended to influence the upcoming 2024 presidential election. That's pretty obvious. The announcement comes amid increased security concerns surrounding the Trump campaign, especially in light of the assassination attempt against the former president. As this week, Trump aides told the Washington Post that the campaign was forced to cancel several rallies and other events due to the Secret Service failing to secure the areas. The Secret Service allegedly denied requests by the Trump campaign for additional snipers, bomb-sniffing dogs, and specialty teams, saying there just weren't enough resources at the time. This comes as Secret Service agents have since claimed that their training manuals are insufficient for dealing with a former president that is currently running for re-election, which does seem like an oversight in their manual. You think that they're trying to plan for all these contingencies and different situations. You'd think that would be a situation they'd be prepared for.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to think about it. I kind of understand them, but also I think they should definitely develop some policy for this.
Yeah, especially in light of all that's going on, and develop it quick.
Yep. Well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And for more updates until our next show, you can find us on social media at FISM News, or you can download the FISM app to take us on the go. Thanks so much. God bless, and we'll see you tomorrow night with more news coverage.